Silence ruled the stars. For nearly 5,000 years, humanity had perfected peace. No wars. No armies. No weapons. The last battles had been buried beneath the red dust of Mars, their machines dismantled, their horrors archived, their memories softened into myth. Children learned about war the way they learned about extinct animals. Distant, irrelevant, impossible to imagine returning. Earth had become something else entirely. A civilization of artists, scientists, and dreamers. Cities shimmered like glass across continents. Orbiting habitats bloomed like silver rings around the planet. Human ships traveled the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guests, trading knowledge, sharing culture, offering help. They were known across the stars for one thing. They were harmless. And that is why no one saw it coming. The sky above New Carthage didn't darken. It tore. Reality itself split open like fragile fabric, revealing something vast and wrong behind it. No warning. No signal. No declaration. Just a rupture. And then they came. Black vessels, jagged, immense, and utterly silent, slid through the wound in space. Their surfaces swallowed light. Their presence crushed the air itself, sending shockwaves rolling across the city. People stopped. Looked up. Confused. Curious. No one ran. Not at first. Because nothing like this had ever happened before. Then the ships began to descend. Sirens tried to activate, but systems froze. Communications failed. Power grids flickered and died. And from the bellies of those alien constructs, something worse emerged. Dropships. Hundreds of them. They fell like a swarm of metallic predators, targeting one place above all others. The schools. Inside Learning Complex 7, instructor Mara Ellison was guiding her students through a lesson on stellar formation. Stars are born from collapse, she said gently, smiling as a child raised his hand. She never finished the sentence. The ceiling shattered. Glass, steel, and dust rained downward as a massive object punched through the structure above. Children screamed. The room filled with smoke and debris. Mara moved instantly, throwing herself between the falling wreckage and the nearest group of students. "Stay behind me," she shouted. Through the haze, a shape moved. Angular. Wrong. It stepped forward with mechanical precision, its form encased in dark armor that pulsed faintly with a sick internal glow. It didn't hesitate. It didn't speak. It didn't even look at Mara. With a single motion, it struck her aside like she weighed nothing. She hit the far wall with a sickening crack. And then, the children began to disappear. Not taken. Not carried. Frozen. Fields of shimmering energy snapped into place around them, locking small bodies in mid-motion. Tiny hands reaching out, mouths open in silent screams. One by one, they were lifted. Catalogued. Removed. Like objects. Outside, the city had become a nightmare. Dropships lined the streets. Figures marched through crowds without resistance, without urgency, without emotion. They ignored adults. Ignored infrastructure. Ignored everything. Except the children. Within minutes, it was over. As quickly as they had come, the ships ascended. The sky sealed itself shut behind them. And the silence returned. But this time, it was broken by screams. The reports reached Earth in fragments. Broken signals. Corrupted footage. Audio filled with static and screaming. At first, no one believed it. They couldn't. For 5,000 years, nothing like this had happened. Not on Earth. Not in any human colony. Not even in the most distant frontier systems. Humanity had built its identity on one unshakable truth. War was over. And yet, as the transmissions stabilized and the data was reconstructed, that truth began to fracture. Entire classrooms were empty. Playgrounds abandoned. Hospitals stripped of their youngest patients. Across 7 colony worlds, the pattern was identical. Precise. Deliberate. Children, no cities destroyed. No infrastructure damaged. No attempts at occupation. Just extraction. Efficient. Surgical. Like a harvest. On Earth, inside the Hall of Accord, silence gripped the highest governing body of humanity. The chamber itself was a monument to their ideals, open, circular, bathed in soft natural light. No barriers. No defenses. No symbols of power beyond the voices of those within it. They had never needed them. At the center of the hall, a holographic projection flickered to life. Footage from New Carthage. Instructor Mara Ellison being thrown aside. Children frozen mid-scream. The image paused. No one spoke. Some couldn't. Others refused to. Because to acknowledge it would mean accepting something far worse than the attack itself. It would mean accepting that they were not safe. They didn't target military installations, one council member said finally, his voice thin and uncertain. They didn't disable planetary systems beyond temporary interference. Another added, almost desperately, this could be a misunderstanding. A first contact error. Perhaps they took them. The words cut through the chamber. Unshakable. All eyes turned toward Director Elias Vorn. He stood apart from the others, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the frozen image of terrified children suspended in alien light. They didn't misfire. They didn't panic. They didn't explore. His jaw tightened. They selected targets, executed a plan, and left. The room fell silent again. Because deep down, everyone knew he was right. Humanity had spent millennia removing every trace of war from its existence. The United Systems Charter had outlawed the development of offensive weaponry thousands of years ago. The last warships had been dismantled. The last weapons decommissioned. Even security forces carried only non-lethal tools, designed for containment, not combat. Conflict had been replaced with negotiation. Violence with philosophy. Strength with trust. And it had worked. For thousands of years, it had worked. Human ships traveled unarmed through contested regions and were welcomed. Colonies were established without defenses and were left untouched. Even the most aggressive alien civilizations had come to view humanity the same way. Harmless. Predictable. And now, that belief had been tested. Casualty report, Elias said quietly. A technician hesitated before answering. Confirmed abductions across all affected colonies, estimated at 312,000. A ripple moved through the chamber. Denial. All children, the technician added, voice breaking. One of the council members stood abruptly. We need to establish contact immediately. Open diplomatic channels. Offer negotiation, resources, technology, anything they want. Yes, another agreed quickly. We are not equipped for confrontation. We must de-escalate. They already escalated. Elias didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. They came into our worlds without warning. They took what they wanted. And they left without explanation. He turned, finally facing the assembly. And you think they're waiting for us to ask nicely? No one answered. Because no one had an answer. For the first time in 5,000 years, humanity didn't know what to do. And far beyond their borders, in the cold darkness between stars, the ones who had taken their children were already gone. Unchallenged. Unharmed. Unafraid. The recordings from New Carthage were not meant for public release. They leaked anyway. No one knew who authorized it. No one claimed responsibility. But within hours, the footage spread across every human world. Unfiltered. Unedited. Unforgiving. People watched. And then they wished they hadn't. A mother's voice echoed through one of the recordings, raw and breaking as she ran through a smoke-filled corridor. Lena, answer me. Her hands trembled as she pushed open doors, each one revealing the same nightmare, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and empty space where children should have been. In another clip, a security officer tried to stand his ground. He held a non-lethal pulsimeter in shaking hands, aiming it at a towering alien figure advancing through the street. Stop. I'm warning you. The weapon discharged, a burst of blue energy striking the creature directly in the chest. It didn't even slow down. The alien reached him in 2 steps. And with casual indifference, it crushed him into the pavement. The footage cut there. Not because the event ended, but because the camera broke. Inside Learning Complex 7, The internal surveillance system had captured everything. The children were still visible in the frames, frozen in those shimmering fields. Eyes wide, faces twisted in silent terror. One boy, no older than 6, had been reaching for his friend. His fingers were inches away, locked in place, never to move again. The system recorded as hovering constructs moved between them, scanning, tagging, cataloging. Each child was assigned a designation, a number, a value. No names, no hesitation. One of the machines paused in front of a girl clutching a small, handmade model of a starship. Her lips were parted mid-cry, her body suspended in perfect stillness. The machine extended a thin appendage. The toy slipped from her fingers. It hit the ground and rolled, the only thing in the room that still moved. Then she was lifted away, taken, gone. Across the city, the pattern repeated. Parks, hospitals, transit hubs, anywhere children gathered. The invaders ignored everything else. Adults were shoved aside, struck down, or simply bypassed as if they didn't exist. Some tried to fight. Most didn't know how. A father charged one of the extraction units with nothing but his bare hands, screaming as he tried to tear his daughter free from the stasis field. The field didn't break. His hands did. The alien didn't even look at him. It simply stepped forward, forcing him back as the platform carrying his daughter rose into the air. He kept screaming, even after she disappeared into the sky. Even after the ships were gone. Even after there was nothing left to scream at. Emergency services arrived too late to matter. Medical teams treated injuries. Security forces secured empty streets. Leaders issued statements they didn't believe. And everywhere, there was one constant: absence. Rooms designed for laughter now echoed with silence. Beds remained made, untouched. Shoes sat by doors that would never open again. Toys lay scattered across floors, abandoned mid-play. And the worst part, there was no destruction, no burning cities, no collapsing infrastructure, no visible war. Everything was still there. Everything except them. That made it worse. Because it meant this wasn't chaos. It wasn't collateral damage. It was intentional, calculated, precise. This was not an attack. It was a harvest. And humanity had just learned something it had forgotten long ago. There are things in the universe that don't want your land. They don't want your resources. They don't want your surrender. They want something else. Something far more valuable. And once they take it, they don't give it back. The message did not arrive immediately. For 12 hours, humanity waited. Signals were broadcast across every known frequency. Diplomatic channels were opened. Translation matrices prepared. Emergency protocols activated. No response. Just silence. And then, without warning, every screen lit up. Homes, streets, hospitals, government halls, orbiting stations. The signal forced its way through every system at once, overriding all controls as if they didn't exist. The image that appeared was not meant to comfort. It was meant to dominate. A figure stood at the center of the transmission. Inhuman, encased in layered armor that seemed less manufactured and more grown. Its surface pulsed faintly, like something alive beneath it. Its face, if it could be called that, was a cluster of shifting structures. Mandibles, lenses, sensory nodes. It did not resemble anything human, and it made no attempt to. When it spoke, the sound bypassed language. The meaning simply appeared. Terran species. Across Earth, across the colonies, billions listened. Frozen. You will not attempt pursuit. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying something insignificant. Your offspring have been collected. A ripple of shock moved through every world. Not taken. Collected. The word landed like a blade. They will serve a higher function within the continuum. Behind the figure, shapes moved. Briefly visible. Rows. Endless rows. Small forms suspended in dim, artificial light. The image flickered before anyone could focus. But it was enough. It was real. They were alive. And they were not free. Your species is non-hostile. Non-competitive. structurally compliant. The tone did not change. It didn't need to. You are not considered a threat. In the Hall of Accord, several council members visibly flinched. Not at the words, but at the certainty behind them. You will continue your current existence. The pause. We will return. The words echoed. Certain. Absolute. Cycle interval, 30 standard years. Another pause. Longer this time. Deliberate. As your population replenishes. Something shifted in the chamber. A realization. A sick, horrifying clarity. This wasn't a one-time event. This was a system. The process. A schedule. A harvest. The figure leaned slightly closer to whatever was transmitting the image. And for the first time, there was something resembling emotion. Not anger. Not hatred. Amusement. Do not resist. The transmission ended. No fade. No distortion. Just gone. Across human space, silence followed. Not confusion. Not panic. Something else. Something deeper. In homes, people stared at blank screens, their reflections staring back at them. In cities, crowds stood motionless, as if the world itself had paused. In the Hall of Accord, no one moved. No one spoke. Because there was nothing left to misunderstand. They hadn't been attacked. They had been measured. And categorized. Harmless. Safe to exploit. Director Elias Vorn stood motionless, eyes fixed on the now empty projection space. His hands were clenched behind his back so tightly his knuckles had turned white. They think we won't fight, someone whispered. Elias didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter than before. But far more dangerous. No. He turned slowly, scanning the room. They think we can't. And for the first time since the message ended, something changed. Not in the room. Not in the systems. Not even in the world. It changed in people. The fear was still there. The grief. The shock. But underneath it, something older began to surface. Something humanity had buried for 5,000 years. Something the invaders had never seen. And never expected. They had taken the children. They had issued their warning. They had made their mistake. No one left the Hall of Accord. Not after the transmission. Not after the words had settled into something real. The chamber remained still, as if movement itself might break whatever fragile control remained. Some sat in silence. Some stared at nothing. Others replayed the message over and over again, as if repetition might somehow change it. It didn't. They're coming back. The words hung in the air. Unchallenged. Unanswered. 30 years, another voice said quietly. They expect us to recover. To rebuild. To replenish. No one liked that word. No one said it again. A council member stood, his composure barely holding. Then we prepare. We reinforce our colonies. We increase surveillance. We. With what? The question cut through everything. Elias Vorn didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. With what? He repeated, turning slowly toward the speaker. Are you planning to defend 700 systems? The council member faltered. No one answered. Because the answer was obvious. They had nothing. No fleets. No weapons. No defenses capable of stopping what they had just witnessed. 5,000 years of peace had not just changed humanity. It had disarmed it. Completely. We open negotiations, someone insisted, desperation creeping into their tone. We offer them something else. Resources. Technology. Anything that gives them an alternative. They didn't ask. Elias' voice was calm. Too calm. They didn't negotiate. They didn't warn us. They didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, closer to the center of the chamber. They took exactly what they came for. Silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. A different council member spoke, more quietly this time. Then what are you suggesting? Elias didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted, not to the council but beyond them. To the far wall of the chamber. To something most people in the room had never noticed. Because it had never mattered. Not until now. The Treaty of Silence, Elias said at last. The words felt out of place. Buried. Several members frowned. One of the older representatives stiffened slightly. That treaty was symbolic. A historical closure to the resource conflicts. It has no operational authority. Elias finally turned back. That's what people believe. A flicker of unease moved through the room. The treaty didn't just end the wars, he continued. It ensured they could never happen again. That was the point, someone said. Elias nodded once. Yes. Then his expression hardened. Publicly. The room went still. Not confused. Not yet. But something was shifting. You're not making sense, the council member said. Everything was dismantled. Every war asset. Every system. No. Elias interrupted. Quite precise. They weren't. The word didn't echo. It didn't need to. It landed. For a moment, no one reacted. Because the implication hadn't fully formed yet. It did. That's impossible, someone whispered. Elias took another step forward. 5,000 years ago, the people who ended the war weren't idealists. His voice carried something now. Not anger. Not fear. Memory. They were survivors. The chamber felt smaller. Tighter. They had seen what humanity was capable of. What we could become when pushed far enough. His gaze moved across the room, locking onto each of them in turn. They didn't trust peace. No one spoke. No one moved. Because suddenly, they were listening. They agreed to disarm. To dismantle. To build something better. The pause. Long enough for the weight of the next words to settle before they were spoken. But they also understood something else. Elias' hands slowly unclenched behind his back. That peace is a choice. Another step forward. And choices can be reversed. The silence broke, not with sound, but with realization. You're saying, one of the council members began, his voice barely above a whisper. Elias met his eyes. They didn't destroy the war machine. A heartbeat passed. Then another. They buried it. The room shifted. Not physically, but fundamentally. Because everything they thought they knew, everything they believed about themselves, had just changed. Where? Someone asked. Elias didn't hesitate. Everywhere. He turned toward the central console of the chamber. For 5,000 years, it had only ever been used for one purpose. Governance. Communication. Peacekeeping. He placed his hand against its surface. The system didn't respond at first. It had no reason to. A second layer appeared. Hidden. Waiting. The interface shifted, revealing something no one in the room had ever seen before. Not even the highest authorities. Authorization required. Elias didn't look back. His voice, when he spoke, was steady. Final. Director Elias Vorn. The pause. A second voice echoed from the system. Cold. Artificial. Ancient. Lineage confirmed. Several council members stood abruptly. What is this? Someone demanded. Elias didn't answer. He was already moving. Initiating legacy protocol. The lights in the chamber dimmed. Across Earth, across every human world, systems that had been silent for millennia stirred. Something deep beneath the surface of civilization began to wake. Project designation? The voice paused, as if drawing breath for the first time in 5,000 years. Tartarus. Elias finally looked back at the council, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in his eyes. No more negotiations. The chamber trembled slightly as distant systems came online. Ancient systems. Forgotten systems. Weapons that had never truly been gone. We're done being harmless. It did not begin with explosions. It began with movement. Far beneath the surface of Earth, below layers of cities, infrastructure, and forgotten history, something shifted. Systems that had not received power in 5,000 years flickered to life. Circuits long considered dead began to hum. Sealed doors, kilometers thick, unlocked for the first time since the Age of War. Across the solar system, the same awakening echoed. Under the frozen crust of Europa, entire sections of the moon cracked open from within. Black water displaced as massive structures rose slowly upward, their surfaces scarred with age yet untouched by decay. In the asteroid belt, silent rocks split apart along perfect geometric seams, revealing what they had concealed for millennia: ships. Not sleek, not elegant, not peaceful. They were built for one purpose. Their hulls were thick, layered in dense alloy plating designed to endure punishment, not avoid it. No shimmering shields. No graceful lines. Just weight, mass, and intent. On Mars, buried beneath the old battlefields humanity had sworn never to revisit, entire hangars lit up in sequence. Rows upon rows of dormant machines powered on, their internal systems cycling through diagnostics older than any living human civilization. Engines ignited, not with clean, silent energy, but with fire. Raw fusion reactions roared to life, venting excess radiation into containment systems that groaned under the sudden strain. These were not the refined technologies humanity had developed in peace. These were relics of survival. Crude, brutal, effective. Back in orbit, satellites that had once served as communication relays began to reposition. Their outer shells fractured, shedding harmless exteriors to reveal something far more dangerous beneath. Weapon platforms. Targeting arrays. Long-range kinetic launch systems calibrated for destruction on a planetary scale. And at the center of it all, a signal spread. Invisible. Irreversible. Every human system received it. Every network recognized it. Every citizen saw it. A single message, broadcast across every device, every screen, every corner of human civilization. Project Tartarus has been activated. There was no panic. No riots. No chaos. Just silence. Because everyone understood what that meant. Humanity had just made a decision. In orbit above Earth, the first of the ancient warships broke free from its containment dock. It was enormous. Miles long. Its surface dark, uneven, marked by the scars of battles long erased from history. The name etched along its hull was simple. Unadorned. Wrath of Orion. Its engines ignited with a violent surge, pushing the massive vessel forward with terrifying acceleration. Around it more ships followed. Hundreds. Then thousands. An entire fleet assembling in real time, each vessel older than the society that now called them back into service. Inside the command bridge of the Wrath of Orion, lights flickered on one by one. Systems initialized. Weapons calibrated. Targeting solutions loaded. And at the center of the bridge, a voice spoke. Not human. Not entirely. Core systems online. The AI's tone was calm. Precise. Devoid of anything resembling empathy. Combat protocols restored. For 5,000 years, it had waited. It was awake. On Earth, recruitment centers didn't need to open. People came anyway. Not because they were ordered. Because they chose to. Scientists. Engineers. Teachers. Artists. People who had never held a weapon in their lives stood in silent lines stretching for miles. No speeches were given. No propaganda was needed. They had all seen the footage. They had all heard the message. And they had all made the same decision. Director Elias Vorn stood in a command chamber that had not existed 24 hours ago. It had been hidden, buried beneath layers of systems designed to keep it invisible. Now it was alive. Screens surrounded him, each displaying a different sector of space as fleets assembled, systems activated, and long-dead technologies came back online. A figure approached from behind. "You're mobilizing everything." Elias didn't turn. "Yes." The pause. "That's not a response," the voice said. "That's escalation." Elias' reflections stared back at him from the glass of the central display. Cold. Focused. Certain. "They took over 300,000 children," he said quietly. Another pause. Longer this time. "And they said they'd come back for more." The room fell silent. Elias finally turned. "For 5,000 years, we tried to be something better." His voice didn't rise. But it carried weight now. The kind that doesn't come from authority, but from certainty. "We built a civilization that chose peace." His eyes hardened. They mistook that for weakness. Behind him, one of the displays shifted. A map of nearby star systems. A trajectory plotted. Direct. Unavoidable. They're wrong. The first fleet completed its formation. Thousands of warships aligned in perfect synchronization, their engines burning like artificial stars against the darkness. Weapons charged. Systems locked. Awaiting a single command. Elias looked at the projection. At the path that would take them directly into enemy territory. Into the unknown. Into war. Send it, he said. For a fraction of a second. Nothing happened. Every ship moved. Not slowly. Not cautiously. They surged forward as one, tearing through space with raw, violent force. Humanity had not just remembered war. It had unleashed it. They did not send a warning. They did not open a channel. They did not announce their arrival. 30 light-years from the nearest human colony, deep inside contested space, an alien outpost drifted in quiet orbit around a dim red star. It was a forward processing station, small by their standards, but vital. Streams of data flowed through it constantly, feeding information back toward the core worlds of the continuum. It was never meant to face war. Nothing had threatened it in centuries. That was why the sensors didn't recognize what was coming. At first, it registered as noise. Radiation spikes. Gravitational distortion. Irregular, chaotic readings that didn't match any known propulsion system. The station's monitoring AI flagged it as a glitch. Then space broke. Not cleanly. Not smoothly. It ruptured. Reality itself tore open with violent force, spilling raw energy into the void as something forced its way through faster than the system could process. Ships emerged. Not gliding. Not stabilizing. Slamming into real space like projectiles. Dozens. Then hundreds. Then more. Human warships. Their engines burned hot and uncontrolled, venting radiation in massive plumes that lit the darkness like firestorms. There was nothing elegant about them. Nothing refined. They arrived like a punch to the face of the universe. The alien station didn't have time to react. No defensive formation. No strategic repositioning. No warning broadcast. Because before any of that could happen, the humans fired. There was no targeting delay. No charge-up sequence. No attempt at communication. The lead human vessel, a massive dreadnought scarred by time, aligned its forward spine. And unleashed. A single projectile. Solid. Accelerated to a fraction of light speed. It crossed the distance between ships in less than a heartbeat. The station's energy shields activated automatically. And shattered instantly. They weren't built for this. They were designed to disperse heat. Energy. Radiation. Not a physical object carrying enough force to tear through matter itself. The projectile didn't slow down. It punched through the outer hull. Through internal structures. Through reinforced cores. Through everything. And then it kept going. Exiting the far side of the station in a spray of molten debris and atmosphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the station came apart. Sections collapsed inward as pressure failed. Internal systems ruptured. Entire compartments were exposed to vacuum in an instant. The structure began to break. Slow at first. Then faster. Then all at once. The alien command center erupted into chaos. Impact anomaly detected, structural failure, containment breach. It didn't matter. Because the humans didn't stop. They never intended to. Behind the first strike, hundreds of smaller vessels spread out in coordinated patterns. Not defensive. Aggressive. They advanced directly into the debris field, ignoring the remains of the station as if it no longer existed. Because to them, it didn't. Missile bays opened. Not sleek, guided weapons. Not precision strikes. Volume. Thousands of warheads launched simultaneously, flooding the surrounding space with overwhelming force. The alien defense systems tried to respond. Point defense arrays activated. Energy cannons fired. But they were calibrated for something else. Something controlled. Something predictable. This was neither. The missiles didn't move like expected threats. They didn't follow clean trajectories. They scattered. Shifted. Overlapped. Too many. Too fast. Some were intercepted. Most were not. Explosions filled the void. Not silent. Not distant, but violent bursts of nuclear fire, each detonation sending shockwaves of radiation and electromagnetic interference through the surrounding space. Sensors blinded. Communications collapsed. Coordination failed. And through it all, the human ships kept advancing, unaffected, unstopped. Their armor absorbed what the alien weapons could deliver. Plasma strikes burned across their hulls, melting outer layers, but the ships didn't retreat. They didn't slow down. They didn't even change formation. They pushed forward through the fire, through the explosions, through the chaos. Because this wasn't a battle. It was a statement. Inside what remained of the alien command structure, panic began to surface. This is not a recognized combat pattern. They are not responding to defensive pressure. Their vessels are not evading. They're ignoring damage. For the first time, confusion turned into something else. The humans weren't fighting the way they were supposed to. They weren't preserving assets. They weren't minimizing losses. They weren't behaving like a rational species. They were behaving like something far more dangerous. Something that didn't care about the cost. The last remaining fragment of the station attempted to transmit a distress signal. It didn't get far. A second kinetic strike tore through it, ending the attempt before it began. Within minutes, it was over. The outpost was gone. Not captured. Not disabled. Erased. And the human fleet didn't stop to observe the destruction. They didn't confirm the kill. They didn't slow down. They kept moving. Deeper. Faster. Straight toward the heart of the continuum. Because this was never about a single target. This was the beginning. The first reports were dismissed. They had to be. In the central data nexus of the continuum, streams of information flowed in perfect synchronization, processed by systems that had not failed in thousands of cycles. Every anomaly was cataloged. Every threat was predicted. Order was absolute. Until it wasn't. Forward Outpost K-17 has gone offline. The statement echoed through the chamber. Routine. Unremarkable. At first. Cause? One of the overseers asked, its voice filtered through layered translation matrices. Unknown. That word did not belong in the system. It lingered. Unwelcome. Clarify. The pause. No residual structure detected. No distress signal completion. No identifiable energy signature consistent with known weapons. The chamber shifted. Not physically, but in the data. Patterns began to misalign. Reconstruct event. Multiple processing nodes activated simultaneously, pulling fragmented telemetry from the destroyed outpost. Radiation echoes. Gravitational disturbances. Partial visual captures. The projection formed in the center of the chamber. Incomplete. Distorted. But enough. A rupture in space. Violent. Unstable. Unlike anything in their records. Ships. Large. Dense. Unrefined. They lack thermal dispersion systems, one analyst noted. No gravitic shielding detected, another added. Propulsion signatures are inefficient. The observations continued, each one adding to the confusion. These vessels are not optimized. They are structurally excessive. They are wasting energy. The pause. Longer this time. As if efficiency is not a priority. That conclusion did not make sense. Everything in the continuum was built on optimization, on precision, on control. These ships had none of it. And yet, the data continued. The moment of impact. A single object launched from one of the vessels. No energy signature. No heat. No warning. The system attempted to classify it. It failed. Then the projection showed what happened next. The object struck. And everything broke. Silence filled the chamber. Not from lack of data, but from lack of understanding. Replay. The sequence ran again. Slower. Frame by frame. The shields activating. The projectile passing through them. The structure collapsing. The station disintegrating. The system attempted to process the physics. It couldn't. Analysis failure, one of the nodes reported. That is not possible. Another responded immediately. Correct. The pause. Yet it occurred. That was the problem. The continuum did not deal in uncertainty. Everything had a model. Everything had a solution. Everything had a reason. Did not. Additional data streamed in. Multiple points of contact. Multiple losses. All following the same pattern. No communication. No negotiation. No deviation. The same crude vessels. The same inefficient propulsion. The same impossible weapons. They are not engaging in recognized warfare protocols, an overseer observed. They are not engaging in warfare, another corrected. They are applying force. The distinction mattered, because force did not require understanding. It did not require balance. It did not require rules. It only required intent. And the intent was becoming clear. A new projection appeared. A comparative analysis between known civilizations and the incoming threat. Every species in the continuum followed predictable patterns. Defense. Countermeasure. Preservation. They are not minimizing loss. They are not preserving assets. They are not retreating. Each statement sharpened the picture. They are advancing through damage. They are ignoring destruction. They are prioritizing impact over survival. The chamber grew still, because now, the conclusion was unavoidable. They are not attempting to win efficiently. The pause. They are attempting to overwhelm. That realization changed everything. Because overwhelming force, uncontrolled force, was something the continuum had long since evolved beyond. It was inefficient, wasteful, primitive, obsolete, and yet, it was working. Another stream of data interrupted the analysis. Intercepted transmission. Origin, human fleet. The chamber focused. The message played. No translation required. The words carried themselves. We are coming. Nothing more. No demands. No conditions. No negotiation. Just certainty. For the first time since the initial reports, something unfamiliar entered the system. Not confusion. Not error. Something deeper. Something the continuum had not needed to process in a very long time. One of the overseers shifted slightly. A subtle, almost imperceptible movement. They were categorized as non-hostile. Another responded, slower now. That classification may require revision. The pause. Longer than any before. No. The final statement settled across the chamber. Correction. Another pause. Heavily underestimated. The projections shifted again. This time showing trajectory paths. Not toward border systems. Not toward minor outposts. But deeper. Toward critical infrastructure. Toward core processing worlds. Toward the center. They are not probing, one of the analysts said quietly. They are not testing. The realization spread. Precise. They are coming for us. And for the first time, the continuum began to prepare. The continuum adapted. It always had. Across thousands of cycles, it had faced conflict, absorbed resistance, and refined its methods until opposition became predictable. Every enemy eventually followed a pattern. Identify. Analyze. Counter. This time would be no different. Or so it calculated. Defensive grids across the inner systems activated in layers. Energy shields calibrated to maximum output. Interceptor fleets deployed in precise formations. Targeting algorithms updated in real time, fed by the fragmented data collected from the destroyed outposts. The conclusion was simple. The human vessels relied on physical force. Crude. Direct. Inefficient. The solution. Control the distance. Disrupt trajectory. Eliminate before impact. At the edge of the Calvary's system, the first real engagement began. A continuum defense fleet, sleek, luminous, perfectly synchronized, slid into position between the incoming human armada and the inner worlds. Hundreds of ships. Each one optimized. Each one precise. Each one certain of the outcome. Engagement distance established. Targeting solutions locked. Energy output within optimal parameters. Everything was ready. Everything was controlled. Then the humans arrived. Not in formation. Not in alignment. They came in fractured clusters, their ships spread across multiple vectors, their trajectories inconsistent, their speeds fluctuating unpredictably. They are not maintaining cohesion, one of the continuum tacticians observed. Correcting targeting patterns. Energy weapons charged. Solutions adjusted. Predictions recalculated. The humans did something unexpected. They slowed down. Not uniformly. Not logically. Some ships reduced velocity drastically. Others accelerated. A few broke formation entirely. They are destabilizing their own approach. Compensating. The continuum recalibrated. It always did. Targets were reassigned. Priority vectors updated. Weapons fired. Streams of concentrated energy lanced across the void, striking the outer edges of the human formation. Several ships were hit. Hull layers vaporized. Sections of armor peeled away under sustained fire. Damage confirmed. Impact effective. Continuing barrage. The continuum pressed the advantage. Because now, the pattern made sense. Primitive ships. Uncoordinated movement. Predictable outcome. But then, the human ships didn't retreat. They didn't correct. They didn't even slow down. They kept coming. Even the damaged ones. Even the ones venting atmosphere. Even the ones that should have disengaged. They are maintaining forward trajectory despite critical loss. Re-evaluating threat logic. And then, the second anomaly occurred. From within the human formation, dozens of smaller objects were released. Not missiles. Not ships. Something else. They drifted. Cold. Empowered. Barely detectable. They are not registering as active threats. Ignore. Maintain primary targeting. The continuum dismissed them. Because they didn't match any known weapon profile. That was the mistake. The objects continued drifting. Closer. Closer. They activated. Not with light. Not with heat. But with silence. A pulse rippled outward. Invisible. Instant. Across the continuum fleet, systems flickered. Then failed. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Disabled. Targeting arrays went dark. Communication links fractured. Navigation systems desynced. What? The word didn't finish. Because the second pulse followed. Stronger. Wider. More aggressive. The elegant synchronization of the continuum fleet shattered. Ships that had moved as one now drifted out of alignment. Weapons misfired. Commands lagged. Coordination collapsed. System interference detected. Source unknown. Attempting to isolate, they never finished. Because the humans surged forward. At full speed. The moment of disruption had been calculated. Planned. Executed. They hadn't been disorganized. They had been setting a trap. The lead human dreadnought broke through the outer defensive line. Its hull scorched. Its armor partially stripped away. But still intact. Still moving. Still deadly. Its forward batteries aligned. Not a single shot. Multiple. A barrage of kinetic projectiles launched simultaneously, each one calculated to strike different points across the disabled fleet. Without targeting systems, without coordination, the continuum ships couldn't respond. The impacts were immediate, devastating. One ship lost its propulsion core instantly. Another split along its central axis. A third was reduced to debris before it could even register the strike. They are exploiting the disruption. Reinitialize systems. Too late. The human fleet was already inside their formation. At close range, where precision mattered less, and brutality mattered more. Missile pods opened. Rotary cannons engaged. Rail systems fired continuously, flooding the void with solid mass moving at impossible speeds. The continuum ships attempted to recover. Some succeeded. A few regained partial control. But the damage was already done. Because the humans weren't just attacking. They were adapting. Every response the continuum made was countered. Every adjustment anticipated. They are learning in real time. The statement carried something new. Something the system didn't like. They are not following static combat models. They are evolving. That word, should not have applied. Not in combat. Not at the speed. Not against a system designed to predict everything. And yet, it was happening. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When ended, there was no formation left. No defensive line. No coordinated fleet. Only debris. And silence. The remaining continuum ships retreated. Not strategically. Not in order. But in fragments. Because for the first time, they had encountered something their models could not contain. The human fleet did not pursue. Not immediately. They slowed. Reformed. Recalibrated. Not as they had been before. But better. Stronger. More precise. They had taken losses. But they had gained something more valuable. Understanding. Inside the command deck of the lead dreadnought, a quiet voice spoke. Enemy adaptation cycle observed. The pause. Countermeasures already in development. Humanity wasn't just fighting. It was learning faster than its enemy. And that was far more dangerous than any weapon. The first transport was found drifting. It didn't appear damaged. It didn't broadcast distress. It simply stopped. Adrift between systems, its engines cold, its trajectory broken, its purpose interrupted. Human scouts detected it by accident. A faint signature. Barely there. Almost missed. But not enough. Confirm target, the command deck ordered. Matches continuum transport classification, the sensor officer replied. Mass index consistent with biological cargo. A silence followed, heavy and loaded, because everyone knew what that meant. They're inside, someone said quietly. The human fleet adjusted course immediately. Not toward a battle, not toward a strategic objective, but toward that ship, because nothing else mattered. The transport loomed ahead, massive and organic in structure. Its surface pulsed faintly as if it were breathing. No visible weapons. No active defenses. Just a shell, a container holding something far too important. Scan for life signs. The pause. Confirmed, there are thousands on board. Another pause. They're alive. No one celebrated. Not yet, because alive did not mean safe. Prepare boarding teams. The order moved instantly through the fleet. Not soldiers trained for war, not professionals shaped by conflict, but volunteers. Men and women who had never seen combat before, who had never held weapons designed to kill, who had lived their entire lives in peace and now stepped forward without hesitation because they knew who was inside. The boarding pods launched, small, armored, brutal in design. They crossed the void in seconds, slamming into the transport's surface with explosive force. Charges detonated. The hull fractured. Openings were created, and then they went in. Inside, it wasn't a ship. It was something else. The walls weren't metal. They were alive, pulsing and breathing. Veins of dim light ran through organic corridors that twisted in unnatural directions. The air was thick, heavy rung. Stay tight, the squad leader ordered, voice steady despite the tension beneath it. Weapons raised, steps careful, they moved forward slowly and methodically. Then they found them. Rows. Endless rows of children suspended in translucent fields, their bodies frozen in place, their faces locked in fear, confusion, silence. Thousands of them. Some younger than 5. Some barely able to stand on their own. All of them still, connected to the ship by thin, invasive tendrils that pulsed faintly with energy. They're wired in, one of the soldiers whispered. Another stepped forward, reaching out carefully. Don't, the squad leader snapped, but it was already too late. The moment the connection was disturbed, the system reacted. The lights shifted from soft to red. The ship came alive. From the walls, shapes emerged. Tall, armored continuum enforcers moving faster than expected. Energy weapons charged instantly, and the first shot tore through the air, striking one of the human soldiers in the chest and throwing him backward. He didn't get up. Contact, someone shouted, and then everything broke. The corridor erupted into violence. Human weapons fired loud, violent, primitive, but devastating at close range. The first enforcer went down under a burst of kinetic rounds, its armor cracking under the sheer force of impact. Another advanced only to be torn apart by a concentrated volley, but more came from every direction. The ship wasn't just transporting. It was defending. "Hold the line," the squad leader shouted. "We don't fall back." Because there was nowhere to fall back to. Behind them were the children. In front of them was the enemy. The fighting was brutal, close, personal. There were no formations, no distance, no room for error. Every movement mattered. Every second counted, and still they pushed forward. At the center of the transport, they found the control core, a massive pulsing structure connected to every stasis field, every child, every system. "This is it," the squad leader said. "Shut it down, we free them." A technician stepped forward, scanning the interface, then froze. "No." "What?" "It's not a containment system," the technician said, voice shaking. "It's integrated. If we shut this down, it kills them." Silence followed, total and absolute, because the choice was clear. Do nothing and lose them anyway, or act and risk killing them all. Another wave of enforcers closed in. Time was gone. "Options," the squad leader demanded. The technician hesitated, then said, "There's a manual override." "Where?" He pointed directly at the core. "At the center. It has to be done from inside." Everyone understood what that meant. "I'll do it." The voice came from the back of the group. Corporal Daniel Reyes, 23, no combat experience, no hesitation. "You won't make it out," the squad leader said immediately. Reyes gave a small shrug. "They won't either if we don't." No one argued because there was nothing to argue. "Cover him," the squad leader ordered. Weapons raised, fire intensified, Reyes moved straight toward the core. Every step closer made the air heavier, the energy stronger, the system more unstable. Shots flew past him, explosions tore through the corridor, soldiers fell, and still he kept going. At the edge of the core, he didn't stop. He stepped into it. The surface reacted instantly, enveloping him, pulling him inward as the system tried to process the intrusion. His body locked, and his voice broke through the comms. "Do it now." The technician didn't hesitate. He triggered the sequence. For a moment nothing happened, then the system surged. Energy spiked, the entire ship trembled, the stasis fields flickered once, twice, and then they collapsed. Across the transport, thousands of children dropped from suspension, their bodies falling into the arms of waiting soldiers, onto the floor, back into reality. Alive. Free. Reyes didn't come back out. The core stabilized, then went dark. The remaining enforcers shut down instantly. The ship fell silent. On the command channel, a single voice came through. "Children secured." The pause. "We lost Reyes." No one responded immediately because they were all looking at the same thing. Thousands of children breathing, crying, alive. The mission was a success, but the cost was not forgotten. And as the rescued children were carried back toward the waiting fleet, one realization settled over everyone, cold and heavy. This was only one ship. The celebration never came. There was no cheering on the decks, no sense of victory spreading through the fleet, no relief strong enough to overpower what everyone was thinking. Because the numbers didn't make sense. Medical frigates filled quickly as the rescued children were brought aboard, wrapped in thermal blankets, monitored by trembling hands trying to stay steady. Some cried. Some didn't. Some stared blankly at nothing, their minds still trapped somewhere inside the nightmare they had been pulled from. But even as they were saved, the data kept updating. Final count from recovered transport. 6,214 survivors. The number echoed across the command deck. No one reacted at first because everyone already knew what came next. "That's not all of them," someone said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Inside the central command chamber, projections shifted as new data streams poured in from the captured vessel. Navigation logs, routing paths, destination markers, fragments at first, then clearer, then undeniable. They weren't moving as a single convoy, the analysis officer said. The transport split after extraction. "How many?" Elias asked. The pause. "Multiple." Another pause, longer this time. "At least 12 major routes confirmed." The room went still. 12. Not one, not a single operation, but a network, a system, a machine already in motion. Project Total Extraction Estimate, Elias said. The system processed, calculated, compiled, then displayed the number. Over 400,000. No one spoke because there was nothing left to say. The ship they had intercepted, the one they had fought for, the one Reyes had died for, was a fraction, a small piece of something far larger. Destination analysis complete. The officer continued, voice tightening. Primary routes converge on Central Continuum territory. A map expanded across the main display, lines stretching from the outer colonies toward a single point. Not scattered, not random, but focused and direct. They're not distributing them, someone whispered. They're concentrating them. Elias stepped closer to the projection, his eyes narrowing. Where? The system zoomed in deeper into continuum space, past the outer defense grids, past the industrial zones, into the core. The name appeared. Xiron Prime. Silence followed, heavy, because even without explanation everyone understood what that meant. That's not a colony, the analyst said quietly. It's a core world. Another voice followed. Central processing hub. High-density infrastructure. Maximum security. If they're all being sent there. No one finished the sentence. They didn't need to. A second data stream interrupted, new information extracted from deeper layers of the captured transport, encrypted, hidden, now broken. Displaying recovered system architecture. The projection shifted again, and this time it wasn't a map. It was something worse. Massive structures, layered, organic and mechanical intertwined, networked, alive. What is that? Someone asked. The answer came slowly. Processing matrix. The pause. Biological integration framework. Then the final translation completed. Neural computation system. The room went cold because suddenly everything made sense. Not resources. Not labor. Not hostages. Processing. The children weren't just taken. They were being used. They're building something, one of the analysts said. No, Elias replied quietly. They already built it. He stared at the projection, at the scale, at the design, at the implication. They just needed the parts. Another data fragment loaded, damaged but readable. Integration success rate, 82%. The pause. Remaining units, scheduled for full neural binding upon arrival. The words hit harder than anything before, because now there was a clock. How long? Elias asked. The system calculated, cross-reference travel time, processing capacity, integration cycles, then responded. Estimated full system activation. 72 hours. No one moved. No one spoke. Because in 3 days, 400,000 children would disappear, not physically, but permanently. They're already too deep, someone said. We barely made it to that transport. A core world is a fortress, layered defenses, heavy fleet presence, planetary shielding. We don't have the numbers to. We don't have time, Elias interrupted. Silence fell immediately. He looked around the room, at the fear, at the doubt, at the reality of what they were facing, then back at the projection, at the path leading straight into the heart of the continuum. We're not stopping, he said. We can't. A pause followed, and then someone asked the question no one wanted to say out loud. If we fail? Elias didn't look away from the screen. Then they don't come back. The weight of that settled over everyone, crushing and final. Outside, the fleet was already moving, not retreating, not regrouping, but advancing faster than before, deeper than before, toward something they might not survive. Because this was no longer a war of retaliation. It was a race. And they were already running out of time. They didn't slow down. There was no debate, no hesitation, no reconsideration of what lay ahead. The fleet moved as one, cutting through the dark with engines burning hotter than they were ever meant to. Ahead of them was Xiron Prime. It didn't look like a planet. It looked like a machine. Its surface was completely encased in layered structures that pulsed with artificial life, a fusion of organic growth and mechanical precision. Massive conduits ran across continents, glowing with energy as they fed into colossal spires that pierced the upper atmosphere. Surrounding it was the defense grid, a sphere of overlapping systems, thousands of orbital platforms arranged in perfect symmetry, each one armed, each one active, each one waiting. At the center of it all, the continuum was prepared, watching, waiting. "They're expecting us," the tactical officer said. Elias didn't respond because of course they were. This wasn't surprise anymore. This was inevitability. The fleet slowed just enough to form alignment, not defensive, not cautious, but deliberate. Weapons systems came online across thousands of ships, energy readings spiking as everything they had was brought to bear. Engagement range in 30 seconds. The continuum moved first. The defense grid activated in unison, beams of concentrated energy lancing outward in perfect synchronization, filling the space between them with lethal precision. The first wave of human ships was hit instantly. Armor melted, hull sections tore away, several vessels broke apart under the sustained barrage. But the fleet didn't stop. It pushed forward. Straight into it. "Maintain trajectory," Elias ordered. No one questioned it. The distance closed. Every second, more ships were lost. Every second, the fire intensified. The continuum adjusted flawlessly, targeting patterns shifting, compensating, refining. It should have been enough. It always had been. But this time, it wasn't. "Deploy the anvil." The command transmitted instantly with no hesitation and no delay. Behind the main fleet, something massive shifted. An object, not a ship and not a weapon in the traditional sense, but a construct. 6 miles of dense iron and reinforced alloy dragged across space and fitted with engines that were never meant to exist together. It had no defenses, no weapons, no purpose except one. Trajectory locked. Velocity threshold approaching. Impact in 10 seconds. The continuum detected it too late. The anvil hit the grid, not the planet, striking the southern arc of the defense sphere at a fraction of light speed. The impact didn't explode. It erased. The entire section of the grid vanished in a blinding surge of kinetic force, structures disintegrating instantly under energy they were never designed to withstand. The shockwave rippled outward, destabilizing adjacent systems, overloading conduits, collapsing synchronization. For the first time, the grid broke. "Opening achieved," the tactical officer said, almost in disbelief. Elias didn't hesitate. "Push through." The fleet surged forward through the gap, through the fire, through the collapsing remains of the continuum's perfect defense. They didn't engage the outer fleets, didn't slow to fight, and went straight for the planet. Drop pods launched, thousands of them falling through the atmosphere like meteors, streaks of fire cutting across the sky as they descended directly toward the largest structures on the surface, toward the core, toward the place where the children were being held. Inside the command nexus of Xiron Prime, the continuum began to fail, not completely and not yet, but enough. Defense grid compromised. Orbital synchronization lost. Enemy units have breached atmosphere. The data streamed faster and faster, too fast. They are not engaging according to projection. They are ignoring defensive priorities. They are targeting central processing sectors. The realization came too late. They are not trying to win the battle. The pause. They are trying to end it. On the surface, the impact was immediate. Human forces hit hard with no hesitation and no restraint. They tore through defensive lines, through structures, through anything that stood between them and their objective. There were no negotiations, no prisoners, no second chances. Every second mattered, and every second lost meant more children gone. At the center of it all was the core, a massive structure pulsing with energy and connected to the entire planetary system. Inside it were hundreds of thousands. Locate the primary nexus. The command came through. Confirmed, directly below the central spire. Then we go through. Explosives tore open the entrance. Forces pushed inside, fighting every step, losing people, gaining ground until finally they reached it. The heart of the system, the same structure as before but far larger and filled. Rows upon rows, endless. "They're still alive," someone whispered. "Barely." "Shut it down," Elias ordered from orbit. The pause. We can't. Silence followed. If we cut power, it kills them all. The words hit harder than any weapon. Another impossible choice. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Do it manually. On the surface, the soldiers didn't hesitate. They moved forward into the system, into the core, into something no human was meant to touch. This time, more than one stepped forward because they understood now. This wasn't about survival or winning. It was about saving them, no matter the cost. The system surged as human minds connected to it, forcing it to bend, to break, to stop. The process was violent, chaotic, unstable, but it worked. Across the entire planet, the network collapsed, the connections severed, the system shut down. And the children fell. Alive. Above, the continuum shattered, its systems failing, its logic broken, its predictions useless, because it had never accounted for this, for a species that would rather destroy itself than lose what it loved. The battle ended not with surrender, but with silence. From orbit, Elias watched as the last signals stabilized, as life signs returned, as the impossible became real. They're safe, someone said. The pause. All of them. Elias didn't respond immediately. He just stared at the planet below, at the cost, at the destruction, at what humanity had become again. For 5,000 years they had buried this, locked it away, hidden it from themselves. Now it was back. Not because they wanted it, but because they needed it. They called us harmless, Elias said quietly. No one answered. They were right. The pause. Then his voice changed, colder, sharper, final. We were. The fleet turned, not retreating, not standing down, but ready. Because this wasn't the end. This was a warning. And this time, humanity wasn't the one giving it.